Today I'm joined with the co-authors of a very important book, Hinduism and America. How Hindu Dharma is transforming the West. First, I'll be speaking to Jai Bansal ji from New Jersey. Welcome, Jai Bansal ji. You have devoted more than 70 pages, or roughly 1/3 of the book, to describe the cultural heritage of the Hindu diaspora. Can you describe why cultural heritage was important to discuss in a book that was meant to talk about the contributions of Hindu Americans?
Thank you, Tahir Bhai. Namaste and my greetings to all your viewers. I think this book is, of course, a very important book for Hindu Americans. But your question, is also very important. Why do we need to talk about the cultural heritage of the Hindu Americans while we are really trying to talk about their accomplishments and their contributions to the society? So, you may recall from our previous conversations that to write this book, to understand the contribution of Hindu Americans to the society, we had organized this conference in Boston called Threads 2019 conference, where we had invited a lot of thought leaders from North America, who came and talked about, their journey, their contributions, and what motivated them, what influenced their decision making as they were, going through this journey of their accomplishment. So, to answer your question, let me give you some examples of what some of the eminent panelists said, without really us prompting them. So let me first tell you about Professor Anil Sehgal. So he's a highly accomplished educator from Boston area. Now, he said he lost his father at a very early age. And they were not a family of very, any major, means. They were relatively, lower middle class family. But you see, his family made all kinds of sacrifices. His brothers and other family members made all kinds of sacrifices to put him through school and college. Along the way, he said he got help from many benefactors that he had never met. So, what is he saying? He's not boasting about his personal accomplishments. He's actually talking about the cultural heritage that, places huge emphasis on strong family structure, supporting the young and respecting the elders. So here's an example where an accomplished person is talking about, what values made him what he is today. Let me give you another example. Dr. Amar Sahni. Now, this is a gentleman from Boston area also. He's a serial entrepreneur, and he's from the Sikh Dharma. Now, he has generated, during his career, he has generated probably thousands of jobs in America. Now, what did he talk about? Let me give you some examples. He didn't talk about his companies. He didn't talk about his wealth. He didn't talk about how big his house was. He talked about 3 tenets of Sikhism that drive his daily business decisions. Now, this is what he said: Naam Jap, Kirat Kar, Vanchak. Remember the divine, earn an honest living, and share what you earn with others on a fair basis. Is he interested in making a profit in his business? Absolutely. You cannot run business without making profit. But he's really talking about, he's not driven by that. He's talking about, making a fair living through fair means and sharing it across, his co-workers and the society at large. So, I would argue that this is thousands of years of, civilizational values that are speaking through Dr. Sahni. Now, I'll give you another example. I met this young lady She was, I think, a first-year college student. And from the early age, she felt that, this red dot on her forehead, the bindi, was part of her, cultural identity. And she had to wear it every single day to school and now in college. She did that in spite of the fact that she knew that she was going to be, made fun of by her schoolmates and college mates. But she did that. Now, this young lady is no backward, uneducated woman. She is studying to be a lawyer, and someday she's going to be in the corridors of power, probably in a C-suite somewhere, in an American corporation, or she'll be fighting, major legal cases in American courts. And yet, she felt her cultural identity is extremely important to her, and to display it on every single day. So, when I hear stories like that from our eminent panelists, I said, we said, look, we cannot talk about their journey without talking about what is important to them, what made what they were. It is their cultural civilization, that they cultural heritage that they talked about, and I thought it was very important for us to include that in a significant way in our book.
How's the section on cultural heritage structured in this book, please?
Yeah, good question, Tahir. It's so we try to, when you think about cultural heritage, it's a big subject. There are many, many different dimensions that you can talk about. You can talk about spiritual aspects. You can talk about, the history. What different value systems drive you, and you can talk about civilizational accomplishments. So basically what we did was we took two aspects of it. Firstly, we talked about, some Hindu values that, make Hindu society distinct from, from other societies. And we can, delve a little bit deeper into it. And then we talked about some of the civilizational contributions of the Hindu society to the world. And there are many, many civilizational contributions. So that's basically how we structured it. Talked about Hindu values and then talked about civilizational contributions.
So can you describe some of the Hindu values you and Kalyanji have discussed in this book?
Sure. So, when we talk about values, every society obviously has certain set of values. Every society, believes in telling the truth, not coveting someone else's property, and, many of the basic things that regulate life in, civilized society. So we didn't talk about those. Those are very basic value systems that every society has. We talked specifically about 4 or 5 values that we felt set the Hindu society apart from many others. And let me just give you quick run through what those values are. So the first value that we felt we needed to talk about was this idea of inclusiveness and pluralism. In other words, all diverse viewpoints are accepted. They're not rejected out of hand. Second thing that I think sets Hindu society apart from many other societies is this idea of thinking that the whole world is one family. We have a saying in Sanskrit, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, the entire world is a family. And I can describe why, where that comes from as well. The third value that I think most people know about, Hindus in India, in the West, is ahimsa, or the idea of non-violence or non-harming others. And that, it doesn't apply just to, people, and, it applies to animals, it applies to inanimate objects as well. It applies to nature. So it's a very broad perspective of, the world and what our role is in this world, and the idea of non-harming. as we live through our life, live our life through in the world. The fourth value is reverence for knowledge, and not just knowledge, but also the producers of knowledge, our rishis or our intellectuals, as well as as transmitters of knowledge, our teachers, our gurus. So that is a very important value as well in Hindu Dharma. And the fifth one that we felt we needed to talk about is this idea of a very stable and a close-knit family unit. If there is one thing that I think we can view as a competitive advantage for the Hindu society, it is this strong and stable family structure. So these are the 5 values that we talked about, and there are some more details in the book that we can discuss as well.
Jai Bansal ji, as you said, Vasudev Kutumbakam is a concept of whole world seen as one family. This is the basic pillar of Hindu values as well as Hindu cultural heritage. When it comes to Hindu values, you just mentioned about family system, and also you mentioned about the non-violent attitude embedded in Hindus all across the world. So how would you describe how these values and cultural heritage impact American society?
Yeah. So I think, what would be somewhat profitable, I think, in this discussion would be to talk about where these values actually come from. How did we come by these values? And then we can, talk about, how relevant they are in modern society. And certainly my co-author can, Kalyanji can talk about those things as well. So let me just, paint a bit of a picture for you. If you think about how Hindus relate to the divine, our concept is that there is one, all-pervasive force. We call it Brahma. Different people call it by different names, but that is a all-pervasive force. We cannot even define its attributes. And then there is, the Atman. Atman is the driving force in individuals, a life force in individuals, and Atman is nothing but a manifestation of Brahman. So it's the relationship between Brahman and Atman is like water and wave. So a wave, has shape, it has it has speed, it moves, it has a lifetime. In the same way, individuals have, individuals are connected, but the reality of the wave is nothing but water. In the same way, Atman and Brahman are related. Now, once we recognize this relationship between Atman and Brahman, then you see, it's all of a sudden, I think we can begin to realize that there is no difference between you and me. It's the same Brahman shining through you, that is through me. Therefore, when I meet you, I say, Namaste Tahirji. What I'm saying is, I bow to the divine in you. Now, I see the same divine in everyone else. So, all of a sudden, you can see that it takes us to the idea of entire world is one family, because it's the same Brahman. Now, once you realize that, you also then say, how can I harm you, as an individual? And then, if everything is part of the Brahman, how can I harm an animal? How can I harm nature? So, see, all these values ultimately come from how we relate to the divine and how we see ourselves as part of the divine. Now, so let me, I think maybe I can talk a little bit about this idea of, what I said, inclusiveness and pluralistic society. Tahir bhai, we consider, our Vedas to be divine knowledge revealed to us through some highly realized souls, who we call rishis. So they are the defining pillars of Hindu Dharma. Now, even though they are the defining pillars, they never close doors on new knowledge becoming available to us and modifying these ideas, modifying some of these views about the universe. And so we've always been open to new ideas, new knowledge, new experiences coming and defining, what this relationship is. And so Rigveda, for example, says, Rigveda is the oldest book known to humankind. We haven't been able to put any age on this thing. It's probably, several thousand years old. Right from that, that old scriptures, it says, let noble thought come to me from all directions. And also, it says, there is only one truth. Wise describe it differently. So when you think of this, you have to respect, from the get-go, Hindu society has accepted multiple viewpoints from different places. We have never said, this is the only way that you can, approach truth. Your way is just as fine as mine is. Your way works for you, my way works for me, and ultimately, we can reach the truth from multiple ways. So that's where the idea of, this inclusiveness comes from. And I think I mentioned earlier how the idea of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, or, the world is one family, comes from. Ahimsa, I explained ahimsa. What is interesting about ahimsa is, it's not just to animals, it's not just to human beings, it's respect for nature as well. One of our keynote speakers, Rajiv Malhotra ji, he reminded us that nature is not something to be owned and exploited, like some of the points of view that prevail in the West. It is an entity with its own consciousness, and it has its own rights, and it is our dharma to protect it. Very interesting. It is our dharma to protect it. Just think about it. The hundreds of years of mindless exploitation of nature has brought us to where we stand today, and worried about environment. Our belief system, our cultural heritage has been telling us this, that it is our dharma, it is our responsibility to not exploit nature, but to protect it and only use it as much as you need, not anymore. So there are a lot of these wonderful values that you can start seeing how relevant they are to the society that we live in today. Now, let me talk very briefly about reverence for knowledge. See, Hindu Dharma fundamentally believes that ignorance is the root cause of confusion and all the suffering in the world. The realization of your higher self is nothing but removal of ignorance. We talk about tamsoma jyotirgamaya, take me from the darkness of ignorance to the light of knowledge. So knowledge is highly revered in the Hindu cultural system. In fact, knowledge is looked upon as goddess Saraswati. So it's highly revered. And not only that, even the transmitters of knowledge, our gurus, they are put on a very high pedestal in our culture. You may have heard the phrase Guru Devo Bhava. Teacher or guru is next to God. I mean, and so with values like that, that's why you see we place a lot of importance on educating our children, making all the sacrifices that we need to make sure that they get the best education possible. And you can start understanding how, our society functions. So the last value that we talk about in the book is, of course, the close-knit and stable family unit. In our society, the smallest unit of society is considered to be family, not individual. Now, that differentiates Hindu society from the Western society, where individualism is, given a lot of importance. Individual rights are more important than the family structure. Ours is exactly the opposite. In our system, we expect individuals to sacrifice some of their freedom, some of their freedom, and for the good of the family. You will find that in Hindu society, at least traditional Hindu society, and a lot of it is still, it still prevails to a large extent in modern society, that many generations live under the same household. I've seen 3 generations typically living, sometimes 4 generations, depending on the longevity of the elders, living under the same roof. And in our book, we refer to it as intergenerational symbiosis. What I mean by that? What I mean by that is that there is an interdependency of one generation on the other. Young depend on the old to look after them, to nurture them, to make sure they're educated, they're looked after, and young give tremendous respect to the elders, as well as look after them when they are in their old age. Now, I don't want to paint a rosy, very rosy picture of this. This is the traditional Hindu value, Hindu family system. In modern times, as industrialization has taken hold, as urbanization has taken hold, and as these ideas of individual freedom and individual rights come into play, there is more nuclearization that's taking place. So that, of course, is happening. But still, I think Hindu society has been able to hang on to the traditional family structure, and it continues to really serve us really well so far. What happens in future, of course, is anyone's guess. So I think that's those are some of the things that we can say about the value system, the Hindu value system, and what drives our society.
Tell our viewers how they can have access to this book, please.
Sure. Best way, Tahir Bhai, would be to actually, show it on the screen. They can go to our website. It's vhp-america.org. So vhp-america.org, and go to bookstore, and our book is listed there. Just you can order it from there.
Oh, thank you very much for this valuable information, and we congratulate you and Kalyanji for writing this book, and we are very actually grateful for both of you. And we'll be speaking to both of you in terms of shedding light on contents of this book, as well as the spirit of this book, as well as the impact of this book on our planet. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you very much, and my namaskar to all your viewers.
You just heard the views of Jai Bansal ji on the first part of this book. Stay tuned with us. We are going to a short break. Welcome back. We were just talking to the co-author of book Hinduism and America, Jai Bansal ji. Now I'm joined with another co-author, Kalyan Viswanathan. We are very grateful for your time, Kalyan ji, and we are very grateful for your contributions in terms of co-authoring this very important book. So today we are talking about the Hindu values and cultural heritage aspect of Hinduism and America. How do you see the relevancy of this part of the book with modern America, please?
Okay, it's a wonderful question, Tahir Bhai. So let's take just one example, maybe one or two examples, right? So, I mean, today we are living in a globalized world, and we are in the midst of so many different cultures, different kinds of people from different backgrounds. In our work environments, we meet so many different people, and it is important that we learn to live with in peace and harmony and collaboration and cooperation with people rather than engage in constant conflict. And I think one of the core Hindu values is really this deep acceptance of a plurality of cultures, plurality of ways of being in the world, without imposing one's own ideas on others and saying, I have found the truth, my culture is the only true culture, and therefore everybody should now begin to respect my beliefs and my ways of understanding the world, God, myself, my life, my culture, and so on. So I think this pluralism, a respect for pluralism, is very deeply embedded in Hindu Dharma. And even back in India, the people grow up with so many diverse communities, what they call varna, jatis, etc. They have this appreciation, and our non-insistence that we have found a superior truth or something compared to the others, it makes for a much more gentle and easy way of accepting other cultures, other traditions, and so on. I think this is not an ordinary thing, because if you look at the last 250 years of history, human history, even before, right, a large part of the conflict and violence in the world is generated from the perspective that we have found the truth and therefore we are going to impose it on others. Everybody should become like this. We will convert everybody into one religion, one tradition, and so on. And I think one of the Hindu values that's very pertinent in an increasingly globalizing world is to find that capacity for collaboration, interdependence, cooperation without generating conflict, without pushing an agenda, but rather, striving for harmony rather than conflict. So I think Hindus are naturally able to do that. While they strive for excellence in their disciplines, in their domains of professional work and so on, whether they are a business person or a scientist or engineer or a doctor and so on. See, they are very non-intrusive in the sense they don't push their agenda, and they're very, very responsible for the fact that this is a diverse world we live in. I mean, there are so many different kinds of ways of seeing the same thing, and people have different perceptions about God, about culture, about civilization, about values, and so on. So that inherent respect for plurality, that pluralism is built into the Hindu value system in a foundational kind of way. So much so that even many Hindus just take it for granted. I mean, they don't really appreciate it for what it is. But I mean, you can see that as a very manifest quality wherever Hindus are present. That's one example.
Right, Kalyanji, as we see the rigidity in divine truth, quote unquote,
Yeah.
as we witness in the world, is the cause of many battlefields in our modern times. On the other hand, tolerance and openness within the Dharma is an example for pluralistic values for mankind. We see in modern America political divisiveness and polarization so much in our 21st century. How could Hindu Americans and how could this book help American society to tolerate each other's views?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think this is a very important question. I don't know if the book will help make a difference or not, but certainly in the face of increasingly overheated ways of speaking that has become the norm today, on the media, in the political speak and all of that, right? All these public spaces. There is an important need today in being able to participate in that space without oneself contributing to the overheating of the discourse. You know what I'm saying? So how do you engage responsibly in a space that is increasingly calling for a kind of intense emotion, hatred, and possibly even violence? How do you counter that from a rooted place of non-violence, of ahimsa, of being able to speak in a non-violent manner that does not increase the temperature but lowers it, right? Without losing ground, See, so the contemporary understanding is if you're soft-spoken, people will just run over you, So how do we hold that space of firm commitment to non-violence while and respect for others, while also expressing our position and perspective in the contemporary public square? I think this is a major challenge America is facing, and they're not really succeeding at it. I mean, today's America does not know how to handle these complex challenges, and very quickly they get polarized. In any issue you take, they fall into two opposing camps, and then it's just extremely overheated conversation from that point on. So there seems to be an absence of a concern for, how do we find common ground? How do we engage in a manner that's respectful? And how do we find solutions to our shared problems from a place of respect and dignity for all of us, rather than simply being committed to winning the argument for the moment? As long as I win the argument for the moment, I really don't care about how others feel or what they think and what their impact on others are. That unfortunately has become a characteristic of contemporary society, not just in America. And in a sense, America is exporting this way of being to the rest of the world, and all over the world, the media is so polarized, and it almost plays up the controversies. It thrives on this overheated, controversial kind of rhetoric, where people are, instead of quickly toning things down in a respectful way, it becomes attack and winning and scoring a point and so on. So I think there's a lot here for Hindus to say. And hopefully this book makes a small contribution, but I think it's the value itself of being able to approach complex, controversial, conflicted situations from a place of peacefulness, respect, and a commitment to finding common ground, collaboration, and so on. That I would say is the most important value for us to learn here.
So the existence of this book is one thing, and presence of over 4 million Hindus in the United States is another good indication for those Hindu values. But my question is, how strong are dharmic institutions in the United States that can help Americans to come out of that polarization what we see in today's very complex world?
Yeah. So today the Hindu community, it has whatever it has created by way of institutions. Okay, they are very marginalized in the sense they sort of live in their own small little fragmented communities. Whether you talk about Hindu mandirs or even Hindu organizations, they are not in the mainstream. Nobody, for example, on CNN or Fox News or any one of these, ABC or NBC, they don't call a Hindu to get a Hindu point of view about a contemporary matter, right? So we have ways to go for Hindu thought to be perceived as relevant to contemporary challenges facing us all as shared challenges for all of us. And I think to a large extent the Hindu community itself has to take a greater ownership for this, which perhaps the first generation of Hindus were much more committed to just finding their feet here in a new country and doing reasonably well financially and giving their children, the next generation, a good head start in their own lives and so on. But maybe the second or the third generation of Hindus here may take up this opportunity of going back and revisiting the values and interpreting them for contemporary American society. I think that's a great opportunity for the community as a whole.
So in the end, in our today's discussion, I would like to know some message from you in terms of this part of the book, Hindu values and cultural heritage.
Yeah.
So what would you like to add, please?
So, one thing that has been very recently occupying my mind, and I'm sure many others, is this problem of uncontrolled gun violence in America. Where, almost on a daily basis, there is some new incident where several innocent people are shot dead. And it just seems like such an intractable problem, and very often the defense of the current gun situation, the prevalence and ease of availability of guns, is this. People cite the Second Amendment. Okay. Now, I just got a chance to look at the Second Amendment, and I went back and read up a little bit on what are the conditions under which the Second Amendment was passed. That was 1792. The Second Amendment was passed, which opened up the ownership of guns to all people, basically. And in 1793, there was another law passed which basically said that all white people can have guns, but non-white people may not have guns. That was not the Second Amendment. It was a subsequent ordinance that was passed. And the implication is very clear. If you read the two amendments, the Second Amendment and the ordinance that came later together, the law had the quality of arming the newly colonizing white people, and gave them an ability to control and manage the Native Americans who lived here, as well as the African Americans who were not allowed, who were slaves at that time and were not allowed to possess guns. Subsequently, that was removed so that it became open to everybody. The question is, in a contemporary society, is that a legitimate way of operating? And many people in the West also say that America is the only Western country which has this kind of a position on gun ownership and such a consistent and significant incidents of gun-related violence on a daily basis. I just want to draw a parallel, and if you look at in Indian society and where I lived back in India before I came here, one of the characteristics of our communities is most Hindus do not wish to possess a gun. Most of them. And it's not in their character to want to have a gun, And it's peculiar. Even when I first heard about the Second Amendment, my thought was, how is it possible that everybody can have a gun? I mean, the military can have guns, the police can have guns, the people working in the security industry can have guns. That's understandable. But everybody having guns in their homes? Certainly that's something not so happy is going to happen on that account, sooner or later, right? And if you think about that for a moment, right? Within the Hindu social structure, there was a community called the Kshatriya community who was empowered to possess weapons. After a great deal of training, they had to go through a lot of training, not only on how to use weapons, but also when to use them and when not to use them and for what purpose to use them and so on. And therefore, the other community, the non-Kshatriya communities in India, did not possess weapons, did not aspire to possess weapons. In part, that was one of the weaknesses of Hindu society, that once the Kshatriyas were removed, it was easy to rule a vast number of Hindus with a very small army or a small controlling force. But there is something to be learned from there for the modern society, which is we had to rethink really whether this rampant, ubiquitous gun ownership should really be made so easily accessible without any training, any kind of licensure, any kind of barriers to gun ownership, which clearly enables this kind of continued violence. So that is just my one thought on the subject of relevance of Hindu values in the contemporary society.
Thank you very much, Kalyan ji, for joining us today. Your thoughts are very valuable. Thank you for watching my discussion with Jai Bansal ji and Kalyan Viswanathan ji on their very important book, Hinduism and America, How Hindu Dharma is Transforming the West. Please subscribe our channel and also consider to donate our channel.
Subscribe TAG TV YouTube channel and press the notification button.